One dad's amazing blind date discovery. Only one girl gave a flower to his son in a wheelchair. Tom glanced at the clock on the wall of the hardware store, a few minutes past 5. He felt the familiar weight of the world pressing down on his shoulders. Leaving work, he was haunted by a mixture of urgency and dread. In just a few hours, he would be sitting in a small diner, watching his son Danny face the world, knowing their lives could change in subtle ways tonight. But with change came risk, and the thought twisted in Tom's gut like a rusty nail. Through the summer haze, Tom thought about the moment Danny's life slipped into new confines. His innocence replaced with the hard reality of a wheelchair after the accident. Now, navigating the world as a single father, he spent his days in an exhausting cycle of work and care. Every swipe of his credit card for medical expenses felt like another weight added to the pile. He tried to focus on the simple moments, the Monopoly games, the way Danny laughed when he beat him, but the external judgment of their life loomed large. As he prepared for the date, Tom's heart raced. What if Lila, the girl he had picked for Danny, turned out to be just as judgmental as others? What if she didn't treat him like a normal boy, but rather as a charity case? The irrational fears clawed at him, his breath quickened, and he felt the walls closing in around him. He wanted Danny to experience it all, to flirt, to laugh, to fall in love. Yet he feared what that might mean in a society that often ignored those who were different. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. As they arrived at the diner, a wave of excitement washed over Danny, but Tom couldn't shake the sense of dread. They settled at a corner table, surrounded by the bubbling laughter of other teens. It was a world of stark contrast, lively, carefree, while Danny sat silently, his hands resting in his lap. Tom exchanged nervous glances with his son, who shot back a brave smile, acting like he didn't notice the empty stares from other girls. But Tom noticed. It hurt more than he anticipated, each glance like an accusation. Then Lila arrived, a vision of warmth that brightened the dim corner of the diner. She approached with confidence, holding a delicate flower with her radiant smile. Watching, her present it to Danny hit Tom like a punch to the gut. Tears pricked the corners of his eyes, not from sadness, but from the sheer beauty in such unexpected kindness. This moment could be pivotal, a step toward acceptance, hope. But even as he watched this unfold, Tom couldn't shake the growing concern when he saw peer pressure tighten around Lila. He felt a storm brewing inside him. What if she withdrew, pulled back into the protection of her social circle, leaving Danny exposed to the dark undercurrents of judgment? Then the laughter turned into whispers from a nearby table, voices sharp enough to slice through the air. Tom's heart sank as he witnessed resentment ripple across Lila's face. He could almost see her wavering between connection and societal acceptance. The anguish struck him hard, a vivid reminder that even moments of joy are eked out amidst a backdrop of prejudice. Would Lila have the strength to stand by his son, or would she succumb to the weight of others' judgments? A tumult of emotions roared within him. He had wanted this moment to be a breakthrough for both Danny and the world around them. Instead, here they were, caught in a struggle as personal as it was collective, and Tom knew that whatever happened next would not only shape Danny's evening, but would resonate much further than that. Tom felt the air thickening, each beat of his heart reverberating with urgency as he observed the delicate balance of hope and fear unfolding before him. Lila stood there, holding out the flower, her expression caught between genuine warmth and the creeping tendrils of societal pressure. It was an unspoken moment, yet it weighed heavily on Tom's shoulders, and he suddenly understood the profundity of his own role in this scene. He had envisioned this evening as an opportunity, an invitation for Danny to shed the weight of his disability, even if just temporarily. But here, encased in the diner's oppressive atmosphere, he realized this was not just about Danny's journey toward acceptance. It was also about his own evolution as a father. This moment had become a test, a crucible where expectations met reality and where bravery was demanded from both his son and himself. Tom shifted, discomfort spiking through his body as he caught snippets of the laughter and murmurings around them. The judgments lingered like shadows, darkening this gilded moment that Leela had gifted his son. His instinct was to intervene, to shield Danny from the stares, but he hesitated. Was it his place to intervene? Would stepping in undermine the very essence of Danny's agency in this budding connection? Inside, he wrestled with his fears. The anguish of a father who had spent countless nights contemplating how to best equip his son to navigate a world too quick to judge. The duty to protect clashed with the need to allow Danny to forge his own path. With a deep breath, Tom quelled the panic that threatened to surge within. The judgments lingered, like shadows, darkening this gilded moment that Leela had gifted his son. His instinct was to intervene, to shield Danny from the stares, but he hesitated. Was it his place to intervene? Would stepping in undermine the very essence of Danny's agency in this budding connection? Inside, he wrestled with his fears, the anguish of a father who had spent countless nights contemplating how to best equip his son to navigate a world too quick to judge. The duty to protect clashed with the need to allow Danny to forge his own path. With a deep breath, Tom quelled the panic that threatened to surge within. He needed to trust in Danny's ability to respond to this challenge. As if sensing his father's trepidation, Danny's gaze hardened with determination. That brave smile remained plastered on his face, and for the first time that evening he then lifted his hand, accepting the flower with sincere appreciation. The change in energy was palpable. Tom's heart swelled. There was strength in that small action, a flicker of the resilience they had cultivated together since the accident. Lila, encouraged by Danny's response, relaxed into her role. They resumed their conversation, laced with laughter, each chuckle weaving a fabric of normalcy even amidst the persistent undercurrents of the diner's chaos. Watching them, Tom felt a poignancy unfurling deep within. For every moment of hesitance, every quiet self-doubt he experienced, he saw reflected in Danny an undeniable spirit pushing to connect, to comment on the world around him. The voices nearby fell silent. Even the whispers seemed to retract, absorbing the unexpected build of camaraderie that was blossoming at their table. Encouraged, Tom leaned back, recognition dawning that this was a pivotal opportunity, not just for Danny, but for himself. He could either remain shackled to the fears of the unknown, or embrace the belief that moments of joy often arise when true connection is forged. Tom's realization sparked a desire for more. He wanted for Danny the freedom to explore his identity without the shackles of doubt and prejudice. With each moment that passed, a plan began to solidify in Tom's mind. This was only the beginning. There had to be ways to instill confidence in Danny that extended beyond this diner, this single encounter. The diner lights flickered, momentarily distracting him. As he turned his gaze back to Danny and Lila, his resolve crystallized. He couldn't just stand by, he had to act. But soon he would confront the deeper societal challenges lurking outside these walls. Would he be able to turn this event into a catalyst, transforming it into not just an evening of connection, but a new chapter in their lives? Tom was suddenly consumed by the question, what would it take to build a world where his son could thrive as the young man he was meant to be, unhindered by societal stigma? The urgency surged within him like an electric current. Before he could second-guess himself, he leaned forward for the first time, ready to shift the trajectory of Danny's life and his own. The unpredictable rhythm of life seemed to align in that moment, awakening something dormant within Tom. He saw Danny sitting next to Lila, his face glowing with that same tenacity he had fought to cultivate in him since the accident. It was time to immerse himself deeper in this learning experience, not just as a protector, but as a partner in Danny's growth. As conversations ebbed and flowed, Tom's thoughts raced. This was not the end, it was the dawn of intention. The diner, nestled beneath fluorescent lights and heavy with the smell of fried food, transformed into a venue where vulnerability could flourish. Tom's fingers drummed lightly on the table, a percussion to the symphony of self-discovery he was beginning to compose. There was something striking about Lila, a flicker of hope in her demeanor, as if she too sensed the importance of the moment. What better way to inspire Danny than to take action that fostered his independence? Tom could envision initiatives that celebrated individuality rather than relegating it to the shadows of conventional expectation. Ideas surged through him like a torrent. Workshops to promote understanding, forums to elevate narratives of resilience, or simply social gatherings that made qualities like compassion and acceptance commonplace. The realization struck him hard. The fear of societal judgment could be actively countered with proactive exposure. Maybe what they really needed was a safe space where Danny could practice social interactions without the threat of ridicule or isolation weighing heavily on his shoulders. But how could he initiate this? Thoughts darted through his mind as he surveyed the scene, a mix of laughter and clattering dishes, and he knew he needed to reach out. It wouldn't be enough to simply dissolve into this moment. He would commit to building a bridge, not only for Danny, but for others like him who suffered within societal confines. Doubt crept in, though. Would this be perceived as meddling? Would his desire to assert himself, to pave smoother pathways for Danny, come across as overzealous? Being vulnerable in the face of disapproval was unsettling, and yet it stood between him and authentic change. Could he risk that vulnerability and confront the judgment that seemed omnipresent in the world outside? As he looked again at Danny, his son engaged in light-hearted banter with Lila, laughter spilling forth, Tom recognized the answer. It could not be about him or how others perceived them. It had to be about fostering the kind of world Danny deserved. Reinforced with this clarity, Tom's gaze hardened with determination. He was not just a father advocating for his son. He was a man committed to self-exploration alongside him. He would wipe out the anomalies of societal ignorance with every connection Danny chose to make. A flicker of despair briefly clouded his mind. What if nothing changed? What if his actions fell flat against the rigid barriers of societal disdain? And then the thought cut through him like a swift gust of wind. Change begins with awareness and conversation. If he and Danny could influence even one person, they had succeeded. Tom hesitated only for a moment, then leaned back to take in the entire landscape of the diner. He felt powerful in his newfound resolve, but a nagging question loomed on the horizon. What institutions, attitudes, or deeply rooted beliefs would he have to confront as he shared this vision with Danny? With Lila's laughter echoing in the background and the weight of possibility pressing on his chest, Tom considered what it truly meant to embrace vulnerability. Would he have the courage to step beyond his comfort zone to engage with the very frameworks that kept so many like Danny in the shadows? The thought churned in his mind like an approaching storm, and before he could fully digest it, an urgent realization sparkled to life. The next step had to involve more than just words. It required tangible action. He turned back to Danny, ready to engage, but confronted with the daunting reality. The time had come to assemble alliances and tear down walls. Would he find the voice and the strategy to lead the charge? The moment of truth was fast approaching, an awakening that would change not just Danny's future, but Tom's as a father striving to redefine possibility. Tom's resolve solidified as he watched Danny interact with Leela. The ease in their banter was a stark contrast to the weight he felt pressing on him. Each smile exchanged between them reminded Tom of all the moments he had wished his son could experience without reservation, without the shadows of judgment creeping in. He had always been a man of action, but the challenge ahead felt monumental. Where would he even begin? The idea of creating a safe space for Danny to express himself was intoxicating, yet terrifying. What if his attempts fell flat? What if they ignited more ridicule instead of acceptance? Fueled by uncertainty, Tom reached for his phone, unlocking it to draft a plan. His fingers hovered over the screen, each guest list, forum topic, and event idea swirling in his mind like a chaotic storm. He paused. How could he create an environment that encouraged vulnerability when he had spent so much of his life building walls against his own? What if the first step was not constructing something new, but rather dismantling what held him back? With a deep breath, he opened a note-taking app, titling it Vision for Danny. The first bullet point emerged. Confront personal fears. Identify them and name them. What if he explored his discomfort around vulnerability, feeling powerless in the face of social rejection? Rather than dismissing those fears, why not embrace them as part of his journey? As thoughts flowed, Tom's heart raced with possibility. He could picture informal meetings with other parents, discussions on how to navigate the complexities of raising children in a world that often turned a blind eye to differences. Promoting empathy, understanding, and compassion was essential. Each person present could emerge as an ally, but would they be receptive? He thought of the friends who had distanced themselves since the accident, uncomfortable with the changes in Danny's life. Did he even want to extend an invitation to those who could not accept the situation? Or should he focus instead on attracting those who had shown willingness to embrace differences? The idea clarified his intent. The focus should be on creating a network of support, not just an event. Tom's fingers flew over the screen as fresh ideas unfolded. A workshop about navigating social spaces, a forum to allow open dialogue about disabilities, and gatherings that promoted connection without judgment. Engaging with individuals who were willing to challenge conventional thinking felt invigorating. He reminded himself the opportunity to advocate for Danny wasn't merely about vocalizing his basic needs. It was about dismantling the barriers of ignorance, one conversation at a time. The implication was deep. He wasn't asking for pity. He was demanding respect. As the diner grew busier, Tom's thoughts shifted back to the broad spectrum of individuals impacted by similar challenges. Other parents experienced similar battles. He bet on it. Should he reach out beyond their circle? The thought triggered a rush of excitement. Networking with local advocacy groups could expand the reach of their mission. Then, a soft chuckle from Danny's direction brought him back to the present. He watched as Danny offered Lila a genuine smile, a spark of joy igniting their exchange. For a fleeting moment, the anxiety of the unknown dissipated. If he could harness that energy, Danny could flourish in a variety of environments, murmuring laughter as the soundtrack to his development. But one question lingered, magnifying in its urgency. Would he have the strength to face the doubters and detractors potentially waiting at the periphery? In that moment of clarity, Tom felt a resolve crystallize. It was less about erasing all fear, and more about choosing to act in spite of it. He had reasons to believe in Danny. Now he must ensure that others could see those reasons too. As he glanced at Danny one more time, laughter woven within their connection, Tom understood. The initial confrontation with those who resisted change was inevitable and necessary. He had to face them head-on, unveiling a vision that radiated hope and determination. With renewed conviction, he committed himself not just to support Danny, but to amplify their shared journey into existence, pushing for change amidst the chaos. No matter what lay ahead, one thing was certain. This new path would require all of his courage, and it would start immediately. Would he unearth the connections he needed to ignite this change, or would the shadows of fear dim their light before it even had a chance? Tom stood outside the diner as the evening grew cooler, a slight breeze curling around him. He breathed in deeply, grounding himself in the moment. The noise of laughter and chatter behind him faded. He visualized what lay ahead. The idea of confronting his fears, of standing before an audience and sharing his vision, felt like a tightrope stretched thin above a chasm. Each step toward that edge was daunting. He fished his phone out again, staring at the note titled "Vision for Danny." It seemed so simple, yet layered with complexity. He needed to share this vision, to articulate what he imagined for Danny's journey. But how? Tom recalled the parents whose gaze had turned away when he spoke. How would he approach them again? Would they laugh, mock, or dismiss his aspirations? Or perhaps they'd surprise him, embracing a new dialogue about acceptance? He needed more than courage. He required a strategy. He tapped his notes, morphing vague ideas into something actionable. His eyes widened as a thought struck him. A grassroots gathering right in their neighborhood park. It would be informal, a potluck of sorts, where parents could meet and exchange experiences. No speeches or pressured discussions, just shared meals and natural interactions. This could form connections, emphasize empathy organically. Could he facilitate an environment where vulnerability felt less like an admission of failure and more like a shared experience? Keeping it light, using humor, and fostering dialogues naturally would scaffold a network of support he desperately wanted. He imagined snippets of laughter and stories shared over plates where judgment would dare not intrude. He began drafting a message for parents. But deep down, a wave of doubt washed over him as he typed, halting his progress. What if no one showed up? What if they ridiculed him for trying? His fingers froze on the keyboard. Frustration bubbled within him, igniting a ferocity he hadn't tapped into before. What was the worst that could happen? Was it really worse than what had already happened? Fears of rejection boiled away into a resolve that set his heart racing again. Dismissing the ghosts of self-doubt, he resumed typing with renewed purpose, reconstructing his words to express authenticity. Tom pressed send. The wave of relief washed over him almost instantly. Whatever happened next, he had taken that leap. His heart thumped with the rhythm of possibility. He wouldn't know if it could lead anywhere unless he tried. The feedback was slow at first, his phone silent, but responses trickled in over the next few days. A mix of curiosity, tentative excitement, and a couple of outright rejections appeared in his inbox. Each response elicited a complex feeling, a blend of hope and apprehension. Yet he realized something profound. The willingness to engage, to communicate, was itself a signal of change. As he immersed himself in planning, Tom settled into a steady rhythm of developing deeper conversations with those around him. During one meeting, he felt the gravity of another truth. The hesitation of parents wasn't born from malice, but rather from fear or misunderstanding. Sharing his vision in person revealed unexpected connections, uncovering hidden fears and vulnerabilities among them. Standing before a group of interested parents felt exhilarating yet terrifying. As Tom began to speak, articulating both his fears and aspirations for Danny, he caught sight of their wary faces shifting to faces of concern, and then slowly into looks of compassion. This was the connection he sought. He was not alone in this fight. Afterward, a woman approached him. Her face lit with recognition as she shared similar experiences, her child facing bullying for different reasons. They exchanged ideas, vowing to collaborate, forging plans to create a supportive community from their shared journey. For the first time, Tom felt a spark of hope that their joint efforts might yield real change. The meeting had ignited emotions and ambitions he hadn't anticipated. Yet, amidst the excitement came a stark reality. Some harder conversations awaited him. The next step involved facing those skeptics, neighbors wary of change, friends distant from the discomfort of vulnerability. Tom took a deep breath, recognizing that a greater challenge loomed ahead. Could he sustain this momentum, turn fledgling connections into a solid network? Would he adhere to his conviction of respect and acceptance, or would the shadows of doubt resurface, undermining his newfound strength? As he left the diner that evening, a sense of purpose filled him, but another question loomed larger. Would he have the resilience to confront the inevitable backlash, to remain steadfast in his belief that Danny deserved every chance to shine? The answer tugging on Tom's heart was unmistakable. He needed to be that champion for Danny, and others facing the world's judgments. The question of what lay ahead galvanized him. The time had come to face the challenge, both internal and external. Tom woke the next morning with a knot of excitement and anxiety in his stomach. The grassroots gathering was just days away, and he felt the weight of responsibility resting squarely on his shoulders. What if he failed? What if he disappointed not just himself, but everyone who placed their faith in him? As he moved through his morning routine, those thoughts trailed his every move, blurring his focus on the mundane tasks of breakfast and getting dressed. He replayed the conversations from the previous meeting in his mind, clinging to the connections he had begun to forge. They were more than just new acquaintances. They had the potential to form a supportive network, a community that acknowledged their shared struggles. But would it be enough? His phone buzzed, and a message from the woman he had spoken with at the meeting lit up the screen. "Thinking more about our kids. Can we chat later?" Hope sparked. They had discussed the idea of creating a safe space for their children, a place free from judgment and bullying. Maybe this was the momentum he needed. Tom replied quickly, setting a time for their conversation. The thought of it infused him with fresh determination. He realized that he wasn't just advocating for Danny. He was giving a voice to others in the shadows, those too fearful to speak up. Each interaction lifted the lid on his confidence, but also forced him to confront the raw emotions swirling inside. As he prepared for the gathering, Tom faced his strategy: a relaxed environment, an inviting backdrop where people could be themselves without fear of embarrassment. The park in their neighborhood was the perfect choice: open, familiar, and vibrant. But what about the skeptics, those resistant to change, who lurked in the corners of his mind? Would they share the same vision, or would they threaten to dismantle what he was trying to build? Tom took a deep breath as he arranged the tables and set up a makeshift banner displaying Danny's Dream Connection. It was a simple phrase, but one that carried weight. Everything Lucy, the woman he was coordinating with, had said about inclusion, respect, and understanding resonated within him, energizing his commitment. The gathering began, the atmosphere pulsating with expectancy. Parents arrived with dishes to share, laughter punctuating their introductions. Tom felt the lines he'd drawn in his mind begin to blur as he met each new family. They watched him, eager for something that had been missing: a conversation, an acknowledgement of shared experiences. As dusk approached, he noticed a little girl making her way toward Danny, who sat in his wheelchair, quietly observing his surroundings. The girl held a small bouquet of wildflowers, her determination clear as she walked past her parents' cautious glances. When she reached Danny, she extended the flowers with a bright smile, saying, "These are for you." Tom felt his heart swell. The act was small, yet profound. It embodied the empathy he wanted to encourage among these families. It was merely a flower, yet it held the weight of acceptance and kindness, sentiments he had longed to see blossom in their community. Yet just as quickly as that moment sparked hope, a familiar voice broke his reverie. A neighbor, eyes narrowed with skepticism, approached. "What's the point of all this, Tom?" The words dripped with judgment, pulling Tom back into the tension he had hoped to avoid. The gathering swirled with laughter, joy, and unexpected gestures of acceptance, yet here stood a reminder of the resistance he had feared. Could he navigate directly through this confrontation without losing his footing? Tom met the neighbor's gaze, feeling the weight of his own resolve. This was not just a gathering. It was a stand for change, a testimony that compassion and understanding could prevail if they just leaned into vulnerability. The moment hung heavily in the air. Would he falter, or would he shine? Empathy starts with understanding, Tom replied without hesitation, his voice steady despite the swell of emotions within him. If we don't begin to see through each other's eyes, nothing will change. As the words left his lips, he realized the fire fueling his confrontation wasn't just for Danny, but for everyone longing for connection, for recognition. The question now was clear. Could he keep pushing against the shadows of doubt, forge ahead into the light of possibility, and make a true impact? The stark choice before him surged with urgency. Would he stand firm in the face of skepticism, crafting a future for Danny and others like him? Just then, as he took a moment to gather his thoughts, he saw Danny's joyful smile as he accepted the flower, a moment of clarity among the noise. He knew deep down that he was no longer alone in this fight. Delightful chaos swirled around him, yet the reality of the impending confrontation weighed heavily on his heart. The stakes had never been higher, and he felt the breath of possibility at his back. But with every conversation and flower given, a thought lingered. How far would he go to protect Danny's dreams? The evening flowed with a warmth that brushed past the doubts still swirling in Tom's mind. He surveyed the gathering, a symphony of soft laughter and earnest exchanges that wrapped around him like a comforting blanket. Yet, despite the visible joy, his earlier encounter with the skeptical neighbor reverberated within him. It was a stark reminder that change was a crucible full of both support and opposition, and now he stood at the precipice of something profound. Empathy starts with understanding. The neighbor's questions seared into his conscience, fueling an internal dialogue that threatened to consume him. Did he truly believe it? Did the families around him resonate with that sentiment? Or was he merely constructing a castle of dreams on shifting sand? Tom turned his attention to the adults intermingling, some hesitant, others animatedly discussing ideas of support and integration for their children. Would they rally behind him against the skepticism, or would they retreat into the comfort of silence? His heart thudded against his ribs as he realized that this gathering wasn't just about creating a safe space for Danny. It was also a crucible testing his own strength and conviction as a leader. Lucy caught his eye, weaving through the mixture of families, her presence a steadying force. She approached him, her face lit with enthusiasm. "Look at them, Tom. They're talking, connecting." Her voice was a soothing balm, momentarily quelling the storm within him. "You're doing great work here." "I hope so," Tom replied, his voice lower than he intended. "But what if it's not enough? What if they really don't see the point?" Her smile softened, yet her gaze was resolute. "What matters is that you're starting the conversation. Change doesn't happen overnight." Her words hung suspended between them, resonating with the gravity of his fears and aspirations. Suddenly, laughter erupted from a nearby circle. Curious, Tom moved closer, seeing a group of children on the playground, their laughter rising like a chorus of pure innocence. Danny was watching, a slight smile curving his lips. It was a small victory, a window of hope he dared to cling to as he watched the children engage, a testament to the breakthrough he longed for. But then a wave of uncertainty crashed over him again. The voices of dissent echoed in his mind. What if the failures of the past were destined to repeat themselves? Tom offered a nervous smile to Lucy. "What if I'm not cut out for this? What if my efforts fall flat?" "You won't know unless you try, Tom. And trying means confronting those doubts, not letting them consume you." Her words sparked something within him, a flicker of the conviction he lacked. Taking a deep breath, he stepped towards the children, urging his feet forward, even as anxiety coiled in his gut. "Remember, this is about more than just acceptance. It's about making sure no one feels invisible." Tom took notice of a parent across the way, arms crossed, watching the gathering with a critical eye. The skepticism he'd faced earlier now stood amplified, questioning his every move. Something inside him hardened. He had to challenge these doubts head-on with unwavering clarity. "Hey, Danny," he said, kneeling beside his son, "what do you see?" Danny looked up, eyes sparkling with unfiltered joy. "Friends!" he exclaimed, his voice filled with life. The purity of his child's perspective cut through the fog consuming Tom. Danny's enthusiasm ignited a renewed sense of urgency within him. Tom rose, determination flowing through him like a lifeline. He walked toward the parent, whose skepticism had turned to indifference. "Excuse me," he approached confidently, "what do you think of what's happening here tonight?" The parent stiffened, preparing to issue a dismissive reply. Tom held their gaze steady, a newfound strength empowering his words. "It's not just about our kids being accepted. It's about building a network rooted in understanding. Do you believe in that?" The air thickened with tension, the moment charged with the promise of confrontation. Tom realized this was not merely a casual inquiry. It was a fight for his belief, a chance to affirm that his passion could ignite change, even in the face of indifference. What lay ahead was unclear, yet the answer to his own reservations would now depend on whether he could withstand the wavering against the tide of resistance. Could he possibly convert doubt into dialogue and foster a community that transcends skepticism? The stakes had escalated. The stakes had become personal. But as he awaited a response, the weight of uncertainty bore heavily on him. Would he break through that armor, or would their exchange ultimately shatter his fragile resolve? Tom fixed his gaze on the parent, the silence stretching between them like a taut wire, ready to snap. He could feel the weight of their mutual reservations anchoring him in place, each heartbeat a reminder that he had stepped beyond casual conversation into the realm of consequence. "Will you at least support the idea of inclusivity?" he pressed gently, feeling a wave of vulnerability crash over him. The parent's expression remained inscrutable. "Inclusivity is just a nice word for demanding acceptance," they retorted, arms folding defensively across their chest. "Kids are kids. They don't care about all that." It struck Tom like a slap. "But they should care," he countered, determination igniting within him. "They should be taught to see beyond their immediate world, to embrace differences. It's about empathy, which," he hesitated, searching for the right words, "which starts at home." The parent's brow furrowed, surprise flickering in their eyes. Was it challenge or mere curiosity? Tom pressed on, fueled by a mix of desperation and conviction. "I'm not asking for everyone's approval. I'm asking for a chance for our children to grow alongside one another, not apart. Will you help me make that happen?" For a moment, they were both locked in that exchange, the children's laughter fading into the background as a heavy pause ensued. Finally, they let out a deep sigh. "It's a noble goal, but good intentions don't always yield good results. What if you fail?" Tom's heart sank with each syllable. Yet it was that very question which spurred action within him. "What if I do?" he said recklessly. "What if my efforts lead to rejection or worse, ridicule? But wouldn't that be better than doing nothing at all?" He felt a swell of confidence rise. The real failures lay in silence, in allowing doubt to drown out dialogue. "I can't control the outcome," he asserted, "but I can control my response to it. Will you join me on this journey, regardless of the outcome, for the sake of our kids?" The parent's face remained inscrutable, but sweat prickled in Tom's palms as he watched their hesitation transform into contemplation. After a handful of heartbeats, they finally nodded, albeit slowly. "Maybe. I could give it a try." Relief surged through Tom, but it was tinged with reality. That singular gesture was a crack in a seemingly impenetrable wall of indifference. Each small victory was a breadcrumb on his journey. But how many would it take to lead him where he envisioned? As he turned back toward the gathering, Lucy approached him, her eyes glistening with delight. "You did it!" she exclaimed, genuinely thrilled. "I saw the way you stood your ground. You were incredible." The glow of her encouragement illuminated his uncertainty. "I didn't do anything remarkable," Tom sighed, reminiscing about the tension that lingered in his chest. "I just spoke my truth." "Exactly," she replied, her enthusiasm unwavering. "Speaking your truth is what brought about that small shift. That's what leadership is about, finding those moments of connection, even in the face of skepticism." Still grappling with his emotions, an ember of hope ignited within him. Tom glanced out at the playground again, where Danny and the other children played with untainted joy, their laughter weaving a tapestry of innocent connection that stood opposed to the lingering doubt in the air. Tom yearned for that connection to deepen, to reach even those who remained hesitant. He realized the gathering represented not just potential, but purpose. But behind that purpose loomed his own trepidation. How many more conversations would it take? How much more resistance could he endure before his resolve began to fray? As the night continued, Tom felt himself standing at the threshold of awareness, ready to confront who he was becoming. But the shadows of doubt still lingered at the edges of his mind, waiting for the opportune moment to pounce. What lay ahead was a path painted with uncertainty, but the stakes had intensified. It was clear he had to brace himself for the next challenge, where not every parent would respond with openness. The next confrontation was brewing, and Tom could feel the urgency tightening around him like a noose. Could he persist, even as the winds of doubt threatened to sweep him off his feet? The next conversation could make or break his fragile confidence. The undeniable truth hovered in the air. He was just beginning this transformative journey, and the answers he sought were obscured just beyond the next bend. The morning sun spilled through the kitchen window, casting a warm glow on the table where Tom sat, staring at the remnants of breakfast. Each bite felt heavier than the last, entwined with the weight of the new challenge he had to face. His conversation with the hesitant parent remained entrenched in his mind, bubbling up doubts, interspersed with fleeting pride over his courage. He took a deep breath, trying to summon the determination he felt last night. A nagging thought echoed. Was he truly prepared to tackle the unyielding hearts that clung to their biases? He reached for his phone, scrolling through his contacts before pausing at Lucy's name. Seeking her input made sense. Her unwavering optimism could be the missing spark he needed. When the call ended, Tom felt empowered by their discussion. "Tomorrow, after school, just a few words to the other parents," he said to himself, rehearsing a strategy. He envisioned himself standing in front of a group, the diverse faces reflecting varying degrees of acceptance or antagonism. Could he help them see what he had discovered? How simple conversations could dismantle the walls built over years. With newfound clarity, he decided to write down his thoughts. Each word poured out, raw and honest, tracing his journey toward understanding inclusivity. It was cathartic. Articulating his vision allowed him to confront his internal chaos. He wanted to convey that teaching kindness and acceptance could create ripples, altering how children navigated friendships and differences. Yet an unsettling prediction loomed. What if his words fell flat? Would those parents simply see a man trying to impose his ideals? The fear clawed at the edges of his resolve. But then he recalled that hesitant parent, how despite their initial resistance, they had agreed to try. It wasn't about convincing everyone in one fell swoop. It was about starting a dialogue. As the evening approached, anxiety tinged his anticipation. He chose to visit the playground where it had all begun, finding solace in the familiar chaos of laughter and play. It was a scene of purity, a mix of joy and innocence, stark against the adult complexities he was now navigating. Watching the children, he recognized their natural inclination toward connection, unmarred by prejudice, and that lit a fire in him. Returning home, he worked late into the night, cutting through analyzed ideas like sculptor's clay. He practiced his speech in front of the mirror, his image holding him accountable. "It's not about being perfect," he whispered to himself, "but being present." He found comfort in that realization. Him, a father, wanting something better, not just for Danny, but for every child. Just as Tom began concluding his preparations, a sharp ring of his doorbell jolted him from his focus. It struck him as odd. No one ever came by unannounced. Cautiously, he opened the door to find Danny's new classmate clutching a small bouquet of flowers, looking both nervous and excited. Behind her, Tom noticed her parent watching with a proud grin. "Hi, Mr. Reed. I wanted to bring Danny these. I hope it's okay." Tom's breath caught in his throat. Here was a small gesture, yet it felt monumental, as if it were a direct answer to his questions and doubts. "Of course, sweetie. That's very kind of you," he managed to say, his throat tight with emotion. As the girl eagerly ran back toward his son, Tom's heart swelled. Maybe the world was shifting, even if only in tiny increments. Maybe his effort mattered more than he realized. However, sinking beneath the surface of that joy was the reminder of his impending confrontation with the other parents. Those potent conversations awaited as the ultimate test. Where was this path leading him, and what awaited him in the face of difficult opinions? The storm he felt brewing within him hinted at the discussions merely waiting to ignite. The time had come for him to not just speak, but to truly challenge the perceptions that crowded the air like heavier clouds looming over the horizon. The day of the parents' meeting arrived, a culmination of weeks filled with trepidation and preparation that had led him to this moment. Tom stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the collar of his shirt as he stared into his own eyes. A flicker of doubt nagged at him, but he pushed it away, recognizing that this gathering was a chance to catalyze change, not just for Danny, but for everyone involved. He glanced at his phone, the screen still illuminating with supportive messages from Lucy, who was encouraging him through this process. "Remember, Tom," she had texted, "one conversation at a time can change everything. Don't forget that." Her words took root in his mind as he stepped out into the open air, butterflies swirling in his stomach. As he arrived at the school auditorium, he could feel the palpable tension, each sound echoing with uncertainty. Children's laughter, parents greeting one another, the bustling of chairs being moved. A part of him wanted to flee, while another pushed him to stay grounded, reminding him why he was there. Tom surveyed the crowd, spotting familiar faces. The hesitant parent from before, others who had been skeptical of Danny's journey, and parents who had already shown warmth toward inclusivity. The variety of emotions present was intense and invigorating as he felt the mounting challenge before him. Would they receive his message with open hearts, or would he encounter resistance? As he mounted the stage, the room finally quieted. Their eyes fixated on him, a mix of curiosity and skepticism surfacing in their expressions. This was his chance. "Thank you all for coming," Tom began, his voice steady as he fought to keep his hands from trembling. "I'm here to talk about something profoundly important, not just to me, but to all of our children." He paused, taking a moment to gauge their reactions, searching for empathy within their faces. He shared Danny's story, who he was before the accident, the journey through recovery, and how the world had met him with judgments instead of compassion. As he spoke, he noticed the audience restructure slightly, some faces softening while others remained rigid. The importance of kindness and empathy spilled from him, allowing the conversation to birth possibilities rather than shame or division. Every flower you give, every moment you spend teaching your children to be open and accepting is a step toward building a brighter future for kids like Danny, he asserted. The room remained quiet, absorbing the weight of his sincerity. Then he noticed a hand raised tentatively from the back. "What if we don't know how to teach them?" a parent asked, voicing the uncertainty lingering in the air. This moment crystallized the very essence of his quest, the importance of honesty and acknowledgement. Ask your kids how they feel, open up communication, start with stories. "And if you don't know how, let's learn together," Tom replied, unleashing the desire to foster collaboration. Afterward, breakthroughs began to surface. Parents opened up about personal struggles, revealing fears they had regarding inclusivity, secrets that stifled their ability to engage. Fueled by his message, they slowly shared excitement about bridging connections with one another and finding ways to implement change within their families and community. Before he ended, Tom dared to propose a challenge. Let's create a partnership with our children at the helm, a space for them to share their experiences honestly with each other. The response was slow at first. A murmur flitted through the air, but those hesitant faces began nodding in agreement, inviting a wave of hope to surge through him. The quiet uncertainty felt lighter, and as he descended the stage, he was met with smiles and comments of gratitude from various parents. They recognized that vulnerability, empathy, and connection were the keys to not only supporting their children, but also fostering an inclusive community. And when he spotted that prior skeptic, the parent nodded his way with a newfound respect, a simple yet powerful gesture signifying the rupture of a judgmental foresight. Later that evening, Tom sat with Danny as they wrapped up their day. The bedroom light danced in soft hues around them, and Tom drew in all the thankful embrace they had received. "Dad," Danny asked, a hint of curiosity lacing his voice, "did you help everyone today?" Tom nodded, allowing a smile to break through the remnants of anxiety that had floated with him throughout the day. "I think we did, buddy. We took a step forward. It wasn't about finishing everything in one day. It was about starting a discussion." Danny grinned, his eyes lighting up with joy. "That's all it takes, huh? Like the flowers I got today?" "Yes, just like those flowers, Danny. Small actions matter. Each one can turn into something beautiful." A wave of satisfaction washed over Tom. Each action they had taken since the diner, each encounter with doubt, had transformed not only his perspective, but also sparked a movement toward building compassion within the community. While the journey wouldn't be without obstacles, Tom felt an authentic sense of triumph bloomed inside him. A transformed spirit fueled with resolve and courage that excised the shadows of judgment. Through a sincere commitment to honesty and openness, he had embarked on a path of clarity for them both. And as he watched Danny drift into a contented sleep, Tom understood that now was the time. Time to keep fighting for a world that radiated acceptance, threaded by flowers of compassion, acceptance, and kindness. This was only just the beginning. And in moments like these, with challenges ahead, he felt ready to take on the world, one heartfelt gesture at a time. Now more than ever, it is crucial to share Tom's story and the importance of empathy in our lives. You need to subscribe now to ensure you don't miss out on more exclusive, emotional stories that inspire growth and connection. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help this vital message reach more people in need of hope and understanding. Comment below with your thoughts, feelings, and personal theories about the story's ending. Let's get the conversation going. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who could benefit from hearing this transformative tale. Let's build a community of support together.